Hello, and today we're going to be reviewing the HyperTough 80007 12-volt cordless brushless cutoff tool. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, first up we've got the battery. Now the battery that comes with this particular tool is a 1.5 amp hour battery and is charged via a barrel plug charger. But you can actually buy a base charger if you so choose to. Now 1.5 amps is a little bit small for this sort of a tool, so I would recommend upgrading to a 4 amp hour battery if you are able to. But that will make the size of the tool slightly larger, so there are some trade-offs there. The battery itself will lock into the tool's handle nice and securely, and I haven't had any issues with it dropping the battery. Now there is one thing I have a little bit of a problem with, and that is the fact that the battery makes the grip quite a bit wider or more chunky than it needs to be, and this can be a little bit challenging for people with smaller hands to control the tool. But we'll go ahead and cover the grip here in a second. Okay, next up we have the grip, and it's kind of a mixed bag. I do like the rubberized texture that they employed, and the pattern that they molded into the rubberized texture is good as well. My big complaint here would just be the overall ergonomics of the grip. It's a straight handle style, and I'm not a huge fan of those. I really do prefer a more natural angled grip that's easier to control, and I do prefer a grip that's a little bit less on the rotund or chunky side of things, simply because, well, when you're dealing with a cutting tool, it's always nice to be a little bit more precise, and when you are dealing with a straight grip, it's definitely not going to be ergonomically correct for your hand. So yeah, the chunkiness is definitely a downside, and the overall shape is also another downside. So at the end of the day, it does need some improvements, unfortunately. Moving on. Okay, next up we have the on-off switch. Now the on-off switch is located on the top of the grip and is going to be easily accessible by your thumb. When you press the switch forward, a green light will turn on to let you know that the tool is in operation. The switch itself is made out of black plastic and has small ridges, with one large ridge at the front that allows you to easily control the direction of the switch. When you push the switch forward, the tool will turn on. It takes about 2 seconds for the tool to get up to full speed, and then when you remove your thumb, then the switch will snap back into the off position and the tool will power down. And it powers down just about instantly. Overall, really no major surprises or problems here, and everything here gets a pass as far as I'm concerned. Moving on. Okay, next up we have the rotating head. Now the rotating head is actually kind of a cool little feature that you don't typically see on, well, cutoff tools. You simply push up on the black plastic switch that's above the power switch, and then you can rotate the head into 3 different positions. It's basically center, left, or right. This is going to be useful for when you're working in tight spaces and you need to cut at a slightly different angle, or if you need to, well, just get it into a different space. So yeah, I really do enjoy this feature, and I haven't had any issues with it adjusting itself, so everything here gets a pass, and it's a great little feature to have. Moving on. Okay, next up we have the spindle lock, as well as the Allen wrench and the 2 cutting discs. Starting off with the Allen wrench. The Allen wrench is a fairly standard Allen wrench, and it will allow you to, well, remove the bolt from the tool when you need to change the blades. Unfortunately, there is no onboard tool storage, so you're going to have to put it in your pocket and hope you don't lose it. The 2 cutting discs or blades that are included with this particular tool are fairly average. The wood/plastic cutting blade is definitely a little bit more on the beefy side, and I haven't actually used it myself yet, but I'm a little bit doubtful that the motor can handle it. And the metal cutting disc is completely average and will work fine as long as you don't push the motor too hard. And when it comes to the spindle lock, well, it's also a fairly standard design. There's 2 different points on the spindle that will allow you to lock the button into place to prevent it from turning, so you can change out the cutting discs. Everything here is a fairly standard affair, and there's nothing that's super extraordinary or stands out. So everything here gets a pass, but don't really expect it to rock your world. Moving on. Okay, next up we have the guard. Now the guard on this particular tool is made out of metal and is fairly deep. However, the motor on this particular tool probably won't be able to handle anything thicker when it comes to a cutting disc or blade than what is already included with the product. Now the guard does rotate up to that 90 degrees, but it is not easily removable. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure it's removable at all. And if you do end up removing the guard, you probably are going to have to do some extensive modifications to the tool in order to accomplish that. But when it comes to the guard itself, it is completely adequate, and I don't have any major complaints. Also, it will not protect your fingers if you are trying to hold the tool on the front, so just make sure that you always have your hand behind that, on the either the handle or behind the guard itself. So yeah, the guard is average and will get a pass from me, but don't expect to be able to remove it. Moving on. Okay, without a battery it weighs 533 grams, which is about 1.2 pounds. And with the included 1.5 amp hour battery, it weighs 709 grams, which is a little over 1.5 pounds. So it's a fairly lightweight tool. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about this particular tool in use. And I have to say, I wasn't exactly the biggest fan of this particular tool. Now, when it comes to the overall operation of the tool, everything works as intended, but there are a couple of problems with its overall design. And the biggest one would probably be the fact that the motor just doesn't have a lot of torque. And that's very obvious when you're trying to cut through something and you press it a little bit too hard and the motor shuts down and then you'll have to restart your cut. This can become very annoying very quickly, and when you couple it with the fact that the grip is definitely a little bit on the large size for somebody with small to medium sized hands, it can definitely be a little bit challenging to control with one hand. So yeah, that is something that is going against it. Now there are some things that are going for it as well. The overall size and weight of the tool are definitely an attractive feature, especially when you are, well, traveling and you have limited space, or if you just need something that's smaller to fit into a tight space to cut something that a full-size grinder wouldn't be able to cut. Now something else that is going for this particular tool would be the price, coming in at around $50 with a battery and the barrel charger. That means that, well, it's a fairly affordable tool, and you're not going to really be able to find anything else on the market that's going to be able to beat it for that price. And if you are on a tight budget, that's a very attractive option. And when you couple it with the size, I can see how this could be a very useful tool to, well, very particular people. And for me personally, it does have a place in my arsenal of tools, but it's definitely not going to be the tool I'm reaching for constantly, and I probably will pick up a more powerful cutoff tool just because, well, it's a tool that I would like to buy, and this particular tool didn't quite scratch the itch, if you know what I mean. Now, this particular tool will cut through metal, wire, plastic, cardboard, you get the idea, as long as you give it enough time in order to complete the task. And that really is the, well, problem with this particular tool, is it's definitely going to take more time than a more powerful cutoff tool would need. And quite frankly, 12 volts probably isn't going to be the best idea for this sort of a tool. Like I said earlier, I do think there is a particular market for a tool of this size, but I think for the average person, they're going to be better off looking at, say, an 18 or 20 volt cutoff tool. So with that being said, it really is going to be up to your own personal needs on if this tool is going to be of any interest to you. And yeah. So let's go ahead and recap with the pros and cons, and then we'll finish out the video. And the first pro would be the price. Coming in at $50 US with the battery means that this is one of the most affordable cutoff tools on the market. So yeah, I would consider that to be a pro. And the next pro would be the size. Overall, this is a very compact tool, which means it's going to be great for getting into tight spaces or to transport when you have limited space. So, in my opinion, this is a pro. Feel. Overall, this does feel like a more premium tool than the price would suggest. So, in my opinion, this is a pro, and especially considering the price point. Rotating head. Overall, the rotating head is actually a very useful feature and will come in handy for a variety of different reasons. So, in my opinion, this is a pro. Rotating guard. Overall, having the rotating guard, which you do not need a tool in order to adjust, is another nice feature and a pro in my opinion. Torque. Overall, the torque on this particular tool is a little bit on the weak side, and I really would have liked to have seen a little bit more. It's definitely frustrating when you have to start over on a cut because, well, the motor gave out. So I would definitely say that the torque is definitely something that needs improvement and is definitely a con on this particular tool. Grip. Overall, well, it does feel like a nice quality tool. The grip is, well, uncomfortable for people who have smaller size hands, and just the overall shape is also not that pleasant. So this is a con in my opinion. No onboard wrench storage. It would have been nice to be able to carry the Allen wrench on the tool so there would be less of a chance of losing it, but since that's not the case, I would consider it to be a con. And that is it for the pros and cons. Final thoughts on this particular tool. It's a mixed bag to say the least. It does feel like a nice quality tool, and I don't really have any complaints about the overall build quality. I don't like the shape of the grip, but if you have large hands, that's not going to be a problem for you. I think its biggest downside would be the fact that it just doesn't have a lot of torque, and that means that the motor will stop working and you'll have to restart your cuts. But as long as you take your time and you know what you're getting into, it's not a horrible tool. I definitely think that this is worth it for certain individuals who are in the need of a cheap, lightweight cutting tool for, say, locks or cardboard or something like that, and I think that there's definitely going to be people who think that this is going to be a great option. But for me personally, I'm probably going to end up buying an 18 volt cutoff tool simply because I really think 12 volt is a little bit too weak for my own personal preferences. So yeah, this tool comes recommended only if you know what you're getting into. It's not that it's a horrible tool, I just think that there are other cutoff tools on the market for more money that will give you a much better user experience. So that's my thoughts on this particular tool. And that is it for this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. God bless.